David pushed open the glass door of Miller's coffee house, shaking raindrops from his jacket. The familiar smell of fresh coffee and warm pastries welcomed him like an old friend. It was 8:30 a.m. on a Tuesday, and the place buzzed with the usual morning crowd, business people checking emails, students with laptops, and retirees reading newspapers. He had been coming here every morning for 3 weeks now. After moving to this new city and starting fresh, this coffee shop had become his safe space. His corner table by the window was empty, just waiting for him. David ordered his usual black coffee and blueberry muffin, then settled into his favorite spot. He pulled out his sketchbook and started drawing the people around him. It was a habit that helped him feel less alone in this big, unfamiliar city. His pencil moved across the page, capturing the tired businessman in the striped tie, the college girl with purple hair typing furiously on her laptop, and the elderly man feeding his dog tiny pieces of his croissant when he thought no one was looking. Then she walked in. David's pencil stopped moving. The woman at the counter had long, dark hair that caught the morning light streaming through the windows. She wore a simple green sweater and jeans, nothing fancy. But something about her made him look twice. She moved with quiet confidence, like she knew exactly what she wanted from life. When she smiled at the barista, her whole face lit up. David found himself wondering what it would be like to be on the receiving end of that smile. Stop staring like a creep, he told himself silently. But his eyes kept drifting back to her. She had olive skin and expressive dark eyes that seemed to notice everything around her. David imagined what her voice might sound like, probably warm and friendly, maybe with a slight accent. He wondered if she was from the city or if she, like him, was new here. His internal thoughts wandered further. She probably has an interesting job, he mused to himself. Maybe she's a teacher or works at that art gallery downtown. She looks like someone who would love museums and indie movies. The woman ordered something complicated. David caught the words oat milk and extra shot, and while she waited, she glanced around the coffee shop. Her eyes swept across the room casually, taking in the morning scene. I wonder if she comes here often, David thought. Maybe she has a favorite table too. I should have noticed her before if she's a regular. He tried to focus on his sketching again, but kept stealing glances. She was checking her phone now, typing a quick message. David found himself imagining what kind of texts she might send. Probably funny ones that made her friends laugh. This is ridiculous, he told himself. You don't even know her name, and here you're creating an entire personality for her. But he couldn't help it. There was something magnetic about her presence. She seemed so comfortable in her own skin, so sure of herself. It was attractive in a way that had nothing to do with looks and everything to do with energy. The barista called out her order, something with a name David couldn't quite catch, and she stepped forward to collect her drink. As she turned around, balancing her coffee and what looked like a chocolate croissant, the impossible happened. She looked directly at him, not a casual glance or an accidental meeting of eyes. She looked right at him with a knowing smile, as if they had been having a conversation this whole time. David felt his face get warm. Had he been staring too obviously? He quickly looked down at his sketchbook, pretending to be absorbed in his drawing. But then he heard footsteps approaching. Light, confident steps coming straight toward his table. You have quite an imagination, said a warm voice with just a hint of playfulness. David looked up, startled. The woman was standing right beside his table, holding her coffee and smiling down at him, up close. Her eyes were even more striking, deep brown with little gold flecks. I'm sorry, David managed to say, completely confused. Your imagination, she repeated, pulling out the empty chair across from him without invitation. It's really active and creative. David blinked, trying to process what was happening. I don't understand. She sat down and took a sip of her coffee, still smiling. You were thinking that I probably work at the art gallery downtown? Close. But I'm actually a graduate student studying psychology. The world seemed to tilt sideways. David felt like he was in a dream, or maybe having some kind of breakdown. What did you just say? You also wondered if I text funny messages to my friends, she continued casually, as if this was the most normal conversation in the world. I do, actually. My roommate says I should do stand-up comedy. David's mouth fell open. He looked around the coffee shop, wondering if this was some kind of elaborate prank. But everyone else was going about their morning routines, completely unaware of the impossible thing happening at his table. How did you? He started, then stopped. His logical mind was trying to make sense of what he was hearing, but coming up empty. I know this is confusing, she said gently, her smile softening into something more understanding. I'm Maya, by the way, David. He replied automatically, still staring at her in shock. Nice to meet you, David. And yes, I do come here regularly, usually around 9 a.m. But I was running early today. She paused. You were right about the museums and indie movies too. There's a film festival next weekend at the Riverview Theater. Foreign films with subtitles. David felt dizzy. Either he was losing his mind, or this woman had somehow heard his private thoughts. Both options seemed equally terrifying. This isn't possible, he whispered. Maya's expression grew more serious. I know it seems crazy. Trust me, I've spent my whole life knowing how crazy it seems. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. I don't usually do this, but your thoughts are different, interesting, kind. She stood up, leaving the card on the table between them. Think about it, David. If you want to understand what just happened, call me. If you decide I'm just a crazy person who made some lucky guesses, that's okay too. David picked up the card with shaking hands. It was simple white cardstock with her name and phone number. No job title, no fancy design, just Maya Rodriguez. And 10 digits that might change his life forever. How long have you been able to? He started to ask. Always, she said simply. But I've never met someone whose thoughts I actually enjoyed listening to. She smiled again. That same bright expression that had caught his attention in the first place. Your mind is a nice place to visit, David Chen. And with that, she walked out of the coffee shop, leaving David alone with his cold coffee, his abandoned sketch, and the impossible knowledge that somewhere in this city was a woman who could read his thoughts, and found them worth her time. David stared at Maya's business card for 3 hours after she left. He put it down, picked it up, turned it over, and put it down again. His coffee had gone cold, his muffin sat untouched, and his sketchbook remained closed. This is impossible. He kept telling himself, people can't read minds. That's not how the world works. But then he remembered her smile when she said his thoughts were different. The way she knew about the art gallery, the texting, even his full name when he hadn't told her his last name. David Chen, she had said it like she'd known it all along. By evening, curiosity won over logic. He pulled out his phone and typed a simple message. Hi Maya. This is David from the coffee shop. I'd like to understand what happened today. He hit send before he could change his mind. His phone buzzed almost immediately. I was wondering when you'd text. You've been thinking about it all day, haven't you? Yes, it really happened. And no, you're not going crazy. David dropped his phone like it was on fire. He had been thinking about it all day. But how could she possibly know that? With shaking fingers, he typed back, how are you doing this? It's easier to explain in person. Are you free for dinner tomorrow? There's a quiet place called Antonio's on 5th Street, 7 p.m. David hesitated. Every logical part of his brain screamed that he should delete her number and pretend this never happened. But the curious part of him, the part that had always been drawn to mysteries and puzzles, wanted answers. Okay, he typed, see you there. The next evening, David arrived at Antonio's 15 minutes early. It was a small Italian restaurant with dim lighting and checkered tablecloths. The kind of place where you could have a private conversation without being overheard. Maya was already there, sitting at a corner table with her back to the wall. She waved when she saw him, looking perfectly normal in a blue sweater and dark jeans. Nothing about her suggested she possessed impossible abilities. You're nervous, she said as he sat down, and you spent 20 minutes deciding what to wear. David felt his face turn red. I did not spend 20 minutes. 22 minutes, actually. You tried on 3 different shirts. Maya grinned. The blue one was the right choice. It brings out your eyes. Stop doing that, David said. But he wasn't angry. More amazed than anything else. I can't really control it, Maya explained. It's like trying not to hear someone talking next to you. Your thoughts are just there. The waiter came over, and they ordered chicken parmesan for him, vegetarian pasta for her. After the waiter left, David leaned forward. Prove it, he said, if you could really read my mind. Prove it right now. Maya tilted her head, listening to something he couldn't hear. You're thinking about your ex-girlfriend Lisa, wondering if she ever knew how much you cared about her. You're also thinking this restaurant smells like your grandmother's kitchen, and you're trying to decide if that's a good thing or makes you homesick. David's mouth fell open. He had been thinking exactly that. You broke up 6 months ago, Maya continued softly. She said you were too distant, too wrapped up in your own world. But really, you were just afraid of getting hurt. Stop, David whispered. The accuracy was terrifying. I'm sorry, Maya said immediately. I know it's invasive. That's why I don't usually connect with people this way. They sat in silence for a moment. David tried to process everything while Maya stirred her water with a straw, giving him space to think. How long have you been able to do this? He finally asked. Since I was little, maybe 5 or 6 years old. My parents thought I was just really good at guessing things. Maya's smile was sad now. It took them years to realize I was actually hearing their thoughts. That must have been difficult. You have no idea. Imagine being a child and hearing every frustrated thought your parents have about you, every worry, every doubt, every private conversation they think you can't understand. David felt a wave of sympathy. I'm sorry. It's okay. It made me grow up fast. But it also made me want to understand how the mind works. That's why I'm studying psychology now. Their food arrived, and they ate in comfortable silence for a while. David found himself deliberately thinking random thoughts, just to see if she would react. Purple elephant. He thought. Maya choked on her pasta, laughing. Really? Purple elephant? You heard that? Of course I heard that. Now you're thinking about a dancing banana. David grinned despite himself. This is the weirdest dinner conversation I've ever had. It gets weirder, Maya said. You're also thinking that you should be more scared than you are. That this should feel wrong or dangerous. But it doesn't. She was right. He should be terrified. But instead he felt intrigued. Like he was discovering a new part of the world that had always been there. Hidden just out of sight. Most people can't handle it, Maya continued. When I've tried to explain it before, they either don't believe me or they get really uncomfortable. They start monitoring every thought, trying to keep me out. It's exhausting for everyone. But I'm not doing that. No, you're not. Your mind is open, welcoming, even. It's like you're not afraid of being known. David considered this after his breakup with Lisa. After moving to a new city where nobody knew him, maybe he was ready to be truly known by someone. Even if that someone could hear his thoughts. Can you turn it off? He asked. Sometimes. If I concentrate really hard. But it's like trying not to blink. I can do it for a while. But eventually it just happens automatically, and you can hear everyone's thoughts, not everyone's thoughts all the time. It's stronger with some people than others. With you, she paused, looking thoughtful. With you, it's like you're broadcasting in high definition while everyone else is fuzzy radio static. David felt strangely flattered by this. So what am I thinking right now? Maya smiled. You're thinking that this is either the beginning of something amazing, or you're about to get in way over your head. Maybe both. He laughed because it was exactly right. And what do you think? I think, Maya said, reaching across the table to touch his hand lightly, that maybe it's time I found out what it's like to have a real conversation with someone, even if that conversation happens to include thoughts you didn't mean to share. David looked down at her hand on his. Her skin was warm, and her touch sent a little thrill up his arm. For the first time in months, he felt genuinely excited about getting to know someone. This is definitely going to be interesting, he said. Maya squeezed his hand gently. You have no idea 3 weeks had passed since their dinner at Antonio's, and David found himself spending more time with Maya than he had with anyone. Since moving to the city, they met for coffee, took long walks through downtown, and talked about everything, from childhood memories to dreams for the future. What made their conversations unique was the way Maya would sometimes respond to thoughts he hadn't spoken out loud. It was becoming natural, like having a conversation on to different levels at once. "Want to see something cool?" Maya asked one Saturday afternoon as they walked through the park. "Sure," David replied, both out loud and in his thoughts. Maya led him to her apartment building, a converted warehouse in the arts district. Her place was on the 3rd floor, filled with plants, books, and the kind of comfortable furniture that invited you to stay a while. "Welcome to my research lab," she said, gesturing to a corner where a desk was covered with psychology journals, notebooks, and a laptop surrounded by sticky notes. David walked over to examine the papers. "You're studying your own condition for my thesis," Maya nodded. "Telepathic phenomena in modern psychology. Most professors think I'm writing fiction, but my advisor, Dr. Peterson, is more open-minded." She pulled out a thick folder filled with handwritten notes. "I've been documenting everything since I was 12. Patterns, triggers, different types of mental connections." David flipped through pages of careful observations. "This is incredible. You've been doing scientific research on something most people think is impossible." "That's the thing about impossible things," Maya said. "They're only impossible until they happen to you." She moved closer to show him a particular page. David caught a hint of her perfume, something light and floral. That made him want to lean in closer. "This is interesting," she said, pointing to a recent entry. "Usually, I can only pick up surface thoughts from people, the things they're actively thinking about. But with you, with me, what?" Maya looked up at him, and David realized how close they were standing. Close enough that he could see the different shades of brown in her eyes, close enough to notice the small scar on her chin. "With you, I can sense deeper things. Feelings you're not even aware you're having." David felt his heart speed up. "Like what?" "Like right now, you're thinking about kissing me. But underneath that, you're also nervous because you've never felt this comfortable with someone before." He swallowed hard. She was absolutely right on both counts, and Maya continued softly. "You're wondering what it would be like to kiss someone who knows exactly what you're feeling while it happens." "Maya, I've been wondering the same thing." The kiss was gentle at first, tentative. But as David relaxed into it, something extraordinary happened. It was as if Maya was experiencing the kiss from his perspective as well as her own. She seemed to know exactly when to deepen it, when to pull back, when to let her hands find their way to his shoulders. When they broke apart, both were breathing a little harder. "Wow," David whispered. That was when Maya looked dazed. "I've never experienced a kiss from both sides before. It's like getting to feel everything twice." They moved to the couch, sitting close enough that their knees touched. David found himself marveling at this new level of connection. "Is this what it's always like for you?" he asked. "No, never. Most people's thoughts are chaotic or boring. Grocery lists, work stress, random song lyrics stuck on repeat." Maya curled up against his side. "But your mind is different. It's like listening to beautiful music." David felt a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with physical attraction. When was the last time someone had described anything about him as beautiful? "I have to tell you something," Maya said, her voice more serious now. "I've never been in a real relationship before." "What do you mean?" "Think about it. How do you date someone when you can hear all their doubts and criticisms? When you know they're comparing you to their ex, or when they're lying about liking your friends?" David hadn't considered this aspect. "That sounds lonely." It was. I learned to keep people at a distance, casual friendships, nothing deeper. It was easier than dealing with the messiness of what people really think versus what they say. "But you're not keeping me at a distance." Maya smiled, but it was tinged with vulnerability. "Because your thoughts don't scare me, even the ones you think are embarrassing or weird. They're honest and kind and interesting." David thought about this with Maya. He didn't have to worry about saying the wrong thing or pretending to be someone he wasn't. She already knew who he really was. Thoughts and all. Can I ask you something personal? He said, everything about this is personal. Maya laughed. Have you ever tried to turn it off permanently? I mean, Maya was quiet for a long moment. I've thought about it. There are experimental treatments, ways to suppress certain brain functions. But this is part of who I am. It's helped me understand people, helped me want to become a therapist. And now, she looked up at him. Now it's how I met you. David kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. I'm glad you didn't turn it off. Really? Even knowing that you'll never have a private thought around me again? It was a serious question, and David considered it seriously. The idea should terrify him. Privacy was something most people took for granted. But with Maya, the loss of privacy felt less like losing something and more like gaining something else entirely. I spent most of my life keeping people at arm's length, he said finally. Always holding something back, always afraid of being truly seen. With you, I don't have that choice, and honestly, it's the most freeing thing I've ever experienced. Maya turned in his arms so she could see his face. You mean that? I do. Though I have to ask, what happens when I think about something embarrassing? Like that time in 3rd grade when I wet my pants during the school play. Maya burst out laughing. First of all, you were 8 years old and had stage fright. That's not embarrassing. That's human. Second, I find your embarrassing memories endearing. Endearing? They're part of your story. All those moments that shaped you into the person sitting here with me right now. David felt something shift inside his chest, like a lock clicking open. This woman knew his most private thoughts, his fears, his desires, even his childhood humiliations, and she was still here, still looking at him like he was worth knowing. This is going to sound crazy, he said, but I think I'm falling for you. It doesn't sound crazy at all, Maya replied, because I've been falling for you since that first date in the coffee shop. Your mind is a wonderful place to spend time, David, and your heart. She placed her hand over his chest. Your heart is even better. As the evening grew darker outside, they stayed on the couch, talking and kissing and marveling at their unusual connection. For the first time in his life, David felt completely known by another person. And for the first time in her life, Maya felt safe enough to let someone truly know her. It was the beginning of something neither of them had experienced before. A relationship built on absolute honesty, where hiding was impossible and being fully seen was not just accepted, but celebrated. 2 months into their relationship, David woke up feeling like he was losing his mind. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to control every thought that entered his head. It was exhausting. Good morning, sleepyhead, Maya said, rolling over to face him. Even first thing in the morning, she was beautiful. Morning, David replied. But his mind was already racing. Don't think about how tired you are. Don't think about work stress. Don't think about that weird dream you had. Maya frowned. You're doing it again. Doing what? Trying to police your own thoughts. It's like listening to someone whisper while shouting at the same time. David sat up, running his hands through his hair. This had been happening more and more lately. The constant awareness that Maya could hear everything made him second-guess every mental impulse. I can't help it, he said. I keep thinking things I don't want you to hear. Like what? David hesitated. Yesterday, while walking downtown, he noticed an attractive woman jogging past. For just a moment, he thought about what she might look like without her running clothes. It was a normal, human thought, the kind every person has and forgets about immediately. But with Maya, there was no forgetting. You thought about the jogger, Maya said quietly. I know. And I know you feel guilty about it. David's stomach dropped. Maya, I'm sorry. It didn't mean anything. I know it didn't mean anything. That's not what bothers me. Then what does? Maya sat up too, pulling the sheet around herself. What bothers me is that you're treating normal human thoughts like crimes. Everyone notices attractive people. Everyone has random thoughts pop into their head, but you're torturing yourself over it. How can you be okay with hearing me think about other women? Because I can also hear how much you love me. I can hear that those fleeting thoughts mean nothing compared to how you feel when you look at me." Maya reached for his hand. "But lately, all I hear is you fighting with your own mind." David knew she was right. He'd been trying so hard to be the perfect boyfriend in his thoughts that he was becoming a nervous wreck in real life. They got dressed. In silence, both lost in their own worlds, at breakfast. David found himself analyzing every thought before it fully formed. Was this okay to think? Would this hurt her feelings? Was he being disrespectful? "Stop," Maya said suddenly, putting down her coffee cup. "Stop what? You're exhausting yourself. And me. It's like being in a room with someone who keeps apologizing for breathing." David felt frustration bubble up inside him. "I'm trying to be considerate by treating your own mind like an enemy." "David, I fell in love with your thoughts. Remember, the real ones, not the sanitized version you're trying to create." But David couldn't shake the feeling that his mental privacy was gone forever. Every worry, every doubt, every moment of weakness was on display. When his boss criticized his work, Maya knew before he got home. When he felt insecure about their relationship, she could sense it immediately. The breaking point came the following week. David was having lunch with his friend Tony from work. Tony was talking about his dating life, complaining about women, and making crude jokes. David found himself thinking that Tony's attitude was probably why he was still single. That evening, Maya greeted him with unusual seriousness. "We need to talk," she said. David's heart sank. Those four words never led anywhere good. They sat on her couch, the same place where they'd shared their first kiss. But now the space between them felt enormous. "You think your friend Tony is shallow and immature," Maya began. "Well, yeah. Did you hear the things he was saying?" "I also heard you thinking that maybe he has a point about some things." David felt his face flush during Tony's rant. He briefly wondered if dating was easier for guys who didn't worry so much about their partner's feelings. "That was just a passing thought," David protested. "I know, but it's connected to something deeper." Maya's voice was gentle but firm. "You're starting to resent me for hearing your thoughts. You're wondering if this relationship is worth giving up your mental privacy." The accuracy of her observation hit him like a punch to the stomach. He had been thinking exactly that. "Maya, and you're scared," she continued, "because you can't even have private doubts about our relationship. You can't wonder if we're right for each other without me knowing about it." David buried his face in his hands. "This is so messed up." "Why?" "Because you have normal human doubts. Because sometimes you wonder if the grass is greener somewhere else. Because I can't work through these feelings on my own. I can't have a bad day or feel uncertain about us without you immediately knowing about it." Maya was quiet for a long moment. When David looked up, he saw tears in her eyes. "I've been afraid this would happen," she whispered. "What do you mean?" "Every relationship I've ever tried to have ends the same way. The person gets tired of being known so completely. They want their secrets back. It's not about secrets," David said, though he wasn't sure that was entirely true. "Isn't it? You want to be able to think about other women without me knowing. You want to have doubts about us without me sensing them. You want to be frustrated with me without me hearing it." David realized she was describing exactly what he wanted, and hearing it out loud made him feel terrible. "I'm not trying to hurt you," he said. "I know, but you're hurting anyway, and so am I." They sat in silence, both struggling with the impossible situation they'd created. David loved Maya more than he'd ever loved anyone, but he was also slowly going crazy from the lack of mental privacy. "What if I told you something that might make this worse?" Maya asked. "Worse how?" "My ability is getting stronger. I'm not just hearing your surface thoughts anymore. I'm picking up deeper things, childhood fears, subconscious anxieties, things you're not even aware you're thinking." David felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of things?" "You're terrified of being abandoned, not just by me, but by anyone who matters to you. It comes from when your dad left when you were 10. David's breath caught. He'd never told Maya about his father leaving, and he rarely thought about it consciously. But she was right. That fear lived somewhere deep inside him, coloring every relationship he'd ever had. "You see," Maya said sadly, I know things about you that you don't even know about yourself. And that knowledge is becoming a burden for both of us. David looked at this woman he loved, this extraordinary person who could see into his soul, and felt more alone than he had since moving to the city. I don't know how to fix this, he admitted. Neither do I, Maya replied. But we have to try, because losing you would be worse than never having met you at all. Outside, it started to rain, just like the day they met, but this time, the sound against the windows felt less like possibility and more like goodbye. David spent the next 3 days in his apartment, avoiding Maya's calls and texts. He told himself he needed space to think, but really he was just scared. Scared of the conversation they needed to have. Scared of the decision he might have to make. On Thursday evening, Maya showed up at his door. She looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping well. We can't solve this by avoiding each other, she said simply. David let her in, and they sat on his couch in awkward silence. It was strange how quickly they'd gone from being so connected to feeling like strangers. I have an idea, Maya said finally. It might sound crazy, but I think it could help. I'm listening. Let's go away for the weekend, somewhere quiet, away from all the noise and stress of the city. We need to figure this out properly. David considered this. Maybe a change of scenery would help them think more clearly. Where? There's a cabin my professor rents out in the mountains, 2 hours drive from here. No cell service, no distractions, just us and time to talk. 3 days later, they were driving up a winding mountain road in Maya's small car. The silence between them was heavy, but not angry, more like two people preparing for surgery, nervous, but knowing it was necessary. The cabin was perfect for their purposes, small, cozy, surrounded by tall pine trees. The only sounds were birds singing and wind rustling through the leaves. They unpacked their bags and made dinner together, moving around each other carefully in the tiny kitchen. It reminded David of the early days of their relationship, when every interaction felt precious and knew. After dinner, they sat on the front porch, watching the sunset behind the mountains. I've been thinking about what you said, Maya began, about my ability getting stronger, and I think I know why it's happening. The closer I get to someone emotionally, the deeper I can read them. It's like love opens up channels I didn't know existed. David felt a mix of wonder and terror at this revelation. So this will keep getting worse? Not worse, different, but I think there might be a way to manage it. Maya pulled a small notebook from her bag. I've been researching meditation techniques, ways to focus mental energy, to create boundaries even when you're naturally open to outside thoughts. She showed him pages of notes about mindfulness, breathing exercises, and mental discipline. You want to teach me to meditate? I want to teach both of us. If I can learn to control when I'm listening, and you can learn to control when you're broadcasting, maybe we can find a middle ground. David was skeptical, but willing to try anything. They spent the next hour sitting cross-legged on the porch, following breathing exercises Maya had learned from her research. Focus on your breath, Maya instructed. When a thought comes, acknowledge it and let it go. Don't fight it, just observe it at first. David's mind raced with random thoughts, grocery lists, work stress, wondering if this meditation thing was just nonsense. But gradually, he began to understand what Maya meant about observing thoughts without holding onto them better. Maya said after they'd been sitting quietly for 20 minutes, "Your mind is getting quieter. Can you still hear my thoughts?" "Yes, but they're softer somehow, less urgent." They practiced for hours over the weekend, taking breaks to walk in the woods and talk about their relationship. For the first time in weeks, David felt some of the pressure lifting from his shoulders. "There's something else I want to try," Maya said on Saturday evening. They were sitting by the fireplace, both more relaxed than they'd been since their fight. "I want to practice deliberately tuning you out, creating mental walls. Is that possible?" "I think so. It takes a lot of concentration, but I've done it before for short periods." Maya closed her eyes, and David could see the effort on her face as she tried to block out his mental voice. After a few minutes, she opened her eyes. "Say something with your thoughts," she instructed. David thought as loudly as he could. "Can you hear this?" Maya shook her head. Nothing. It worked. David felt a rush of relief so strong it almost brought tears to his eyes. How long can you keep it up? Not long. Maybe 10 or 15 minutes before I get exhausted. But it's a start. They spent the rest of the weekend practicing. Maya learning to create mental barriers, David learning to quiet his mind. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. On Sunday morning, as they packed up to leave, David felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope, I have something to tell you, he said as they loaded the car. What? This weekend, watching you work so hard to find a solution for us, I realized something. I don't want mental privacy if it means losing you. Maya stopped packing and looked at him seriously. You don't have to choose between those things. We can find a balance. But if you couldn't learn to tune me out, and I couldn't learn to quiet my mind, David, I love you. Maya, not in spite of your ability, but because of everything that makes you who you are, including that ability. Maya dropped her bag and walked over to him. Are you sure? Because this isn't going away. I'll always be able to hear your thoughts to some degree. I know, and I'm scared sometimes. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. Maya kissed him then, soft and sweet under the morning sun. When they broke apart, she was smiling. I love you too, she said. All of you, even the thoughts you think are embarrassing or wrong or selfish. They're part of what makes you human. The drive back to the city was different from the drive up. They talked and laughed, making plans for how to implement their new techniques in daily life. It wouldn't be easy, but they both felt like they had tools now instead of just problems. 6 months later, David was back at Miller's coffee house, sitting at his old corner table. But this time, Maya was with him. She was grading psychology papers while he worked on sketches for a new project. Your mind is so much quieter now, Maya observed without looking up from her work. Years of meditation practice, David grinned. Plus having a girlfriend who's a psychology expert doesn't hurt. Maya had learned to tune out his thoughts for several hours at a time, giving David the mental privacy he needed, and David had learned to accept that sometimes Maya would hear things he didn't mean to share. More importantly, they both learned that love wasn't about being perfect for each other. It was about accepting each other's imperfections and working together to build something beautiful despite them. Hey Maya, David said. Yeah, I have a question for you, and I want to ask it out loud instead of just thinking it. Maya looked up, curious. David reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Maya's eyes widened. I know you can probably hear what I'm about to ask, David said, getting down on one knee beside their table. But some things are important enough to say out loud. The entire coffee shop had gone quiet, everyone watching the scene unfold. Maya Rodriguez, will you marry me? Before Maya could answer with words, David heard her response in his mind. Loud and clear and full of joy. Yes, yes, 1,000 times. Yes, but she said it out loud too, for everyone else to hear. Yes? As David slipped the ring onto her finger, Maya laughed through happy tears. This is definitely the most unique proposal in history, she said. Only fitting, David replied, for the most unique love story. And somewhere in the back of his mind, David heard Maya's thought, warm and content. Our love story is just beginning.